Cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Cirpo. You can find me on Twitter as Cirpo. And I'm an engineering manager at DAZN. For me, this is a very special occasion. I know that probably you don't care about that, but I do, because 10 years ago, I came here at San Marco Hotel for my first conference as an attendee. And that time was the PHP day. And that's my 10-year challenge. So that's me 10 years ago with Rasmus Lerdorf. And that's me today. Rasmus didn't change. I changed a bit, probably. So let's go back to the main topic. Dear JavaScript. This is basically a talk that I prepared. It's like a love letter to this amazing and awesome language. It's basically some consideration, some opinion about my experience and what I've seen during the years as a developer, and also seeing other people approaching the language itself. So, hey. Dear JavaScript, I love you, I hate you, it's not you, it's me. Why do I love JavaScript? There are so many reasons. One of the main reasons is because it's declarative. It's a declarative language, right? So let's see what do we mean by declarative, making into comparison with an imperative language. So in general, when you are declarative, the code tells the what. And when you're using imperative code approach, it tells you the how. So in general, imperative code is more verbose. So let's make it a real-life example. Let's say that you are going to a bar, to a pub, and you want something to drink. With an imperative approach, basically you will go to the bartender and tell the bartender, take a glass from the shelf, put the glass in front of the draft, pull down the handle until the glass is full, and pass me the glass. Cool. With a declarative approach, probably just go to the bartender, hey, I would like a beer, please, or a Coke. So the declarative approach, or asking a drink, assumes that the bartender knows already how to prepare you a drink. You don't have to ask him to do that. So let's go back to the code then. Let's check this function, this JavaScript function, to lowercase. It's a function that accepts a collection of uppercase words, and we want them to, the output will be lowercase words. In an imperative fashion, what we will do is that probably we will have a function that accepts a collection of words. Then you create a temporary empty array or collection, and then you loop through all the words, you apply the toLowercase function, and then you push it to the temporary array, and then you return the new array, basically. Almost easy to read, right? With a declarative approach, you will use a map. So you will have a function that always accepts a collection of words. You will use a map, and then you apply a callback like word to lowercase to the argument of the map function. Again, here, all the for loop, all the loops are hidden, right? Because the map already knows how to do that. And it's shorter, more concise, and also sometimes easier to read. We have also this kind of approach, not just in the language. Let's think about the front end, for example. Let's think, I don't know, you want to integrate Google Maps in your amazing new web application, and you're using the let's say, the Google JavaScript library for Google Maps. So what you will do, probably you will initialize a new map, passing some options, and then you create a marker because you want to specify a specific location. Then you create a marker, you initialize the marker, and then you set them up on the marker. Seems pretty easy to read. But if you think, for example, even where libraries are going, think about React. Would you write this thing in React in this way? No. Probably you have a component called Google Maps where you pass the options, and that's it, and also your marker. So all the implementation is behind the scene. So it's more declarative. Another reason why I really love JavaScript is because it has a REPL, a read, evaluate, print loop. You can try things straight away. You open your browser, try it from the dev tools, you can try and write JavaScript straight away, or if you want, you can just simply run your terminal and use Node and start writing JavaScript code just to check how things are. So you can easily interact with the language, you can test and play. If you have any doubts, you can start writing code without setting up huge environments, development environments, or IDE, or whatever. So sometimes I get a question, hey, Cirpo, can I do this in JavaScript? Well, you can try it on your console, because your laptop is not going to set on fire, right? So, and the other reason why I really love JavaScript is because it's the lingua franca. So you can find JavaScript pretty much everywhere, of course, in your browser, on mobiles, TVs, wearables, IoT, and so on and so forth. Even at the Zone, for example, we have our web application written in JavaScript, but we are also using JavaScript for TVs. And yeah, for example, IoT as well. You can use JavaScript also to build some robots and stuff. And the other thing is that I wasn't that lucky because I'm a bit old now, but for the last 10 years, even kids and the youngest are approaching programming, right? And JavaScript is a language used, for example, for coding Doge and things like that. So it's amazing. And now I have a quote that you can find in every JavaScript presentation, but I have to put it there as well. So any application that can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript. This is the Jeff Atwood law. Now the reason is that let's check the community. Let's check what we have from the open source point of view. If you check GitHub, JavaScript is the first language, most active repositories, total pushes, and most issues, but I didn't have the space for that. If you check Stack Overflow survey, for example, JavaScript is the main language. And if you check the main tools and libraries on the Stack Overflow survey, you can see that at the free position you have Node.js, Angular, React. Still, again, JavaScript. Another reason why I love JavaScript is because you can start building things straight away. Like, who knows Ben Lesh? Cool. So you're using RxJS, right? Bravissimi. So Ben Lesh is one of the main contributors to RxJS and also AngularJS. He's a Googler, and he's saying that if you're a complete beginner starting off in JavaScript, there's nothing wrong with just learning a frame up front. You can start building things straight away without master that much the fundamentals. And that's also, so the barrier, the entrance is not that high compared to other languages or frameworks. So that's why I love JavaScript. But I also hate you, JavaScript. And the reason is that, let's start again from Ben Lesh. Fine. So when should we start mastering, understanding the fundamental of JavaScript? So where do I start? And he's replying, start with fun, curiosity, and things like that. The knowledge will come somehow, at some point. Raise your hand, how many of you start with another language in their IT career, like PHP, Java, Python, Ruby? Lots of people. Excuse me? I'll give you a hug later. So I started with C at uni a bit, Java, a lot of PHP for 10 years. And a bit of JavaScript as well. At that time when I was a full stack developer, even the full stack wasn't a word at that time, the first year 2000. But I was using JavaScript just to manipulate a bit the DOM, validating the form. I was also validating them on the back end. And just to blicky. So, but those languages, I mean, C, Java, and PHP are different, but they have a lot of commonalities, right? And those languages had a huge impact on, influence on me on how I develop stuff. And I couldn't be, when I started using more JavaScript 5 years ago, also with Node.js, becoming the main language that I was using in every day, I couldn't be that expressive and declarative as I wanted to be. I was reading this book many times, every time, sometimes, and I was really, really enjoying reading this book, which is a very good book. But again, I was understanding the underlying concepts, but I couldn't apply them effectively in my code. Why? And if you go to Stack Overflow today, these are the main questions related to JavaScript. How do I return a response from an asynchronous call? How do JavaScript closure work? JavaScript closure inside loops. How to access the correct dist inside a callback. What is the scope of variable in JavaScript? And my favorite, how can I handle a callback error in JavaScript with try-catch? Those are the same questions that I had 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and they're still relevant. They are still there. So I really like the the ecosystem in JavaScript, right? The fundamentals like events, callback, async, they're so powerful. But I couldn't really understand them and use them every day. I was like, am I dumb? Is there anything wrong with me? Should I change job? Probably not. And one of the reasons is that probably is the fact that we have a sequential brain, right? So when you were coming here to JavaScript Day, we were preparing a luggage. You didn't have like, OK, clothes here, underwear here, and, I don't know, toothbrush in my pocket. When you go to the grocery, you have a list. So you go sequentially reading stuff. Let's check this code for a moment. Focus on this code. So we have a loop, and then we have a setTimeout function. And then the setTimeout function has a callback that will output the value of I. What's the output? 111, 222, 333, 012. Yeah, the answer is 333. But at the beginning, for me, it wasn't that easy to understand. There were times where, yeah, finally get it. Then after 2 hours, I say, what the hell? Why? And same things after 1 week or 1 month. And I'm also using sometimes during interviews this question. We say, yeah, but Cirpo, we don't write code like this. You're totally right. But if you can understand this code and how it works, you will basically understand 90% of JavaScript. So that's why it's important. So there was an answer to Ben Lesh. He said, Matthias said that he agrees. But I'll still challenge you on that. My theory is that people without fundamentals end up facing problems which seems incredibly hard, while it will be a breeze with proper background. This might lead to frustration and giving up as well. That's true. But what are those fundamentals? How deep should I dive in to understand how things work? Because yesterday it was jQuery, then you had Angular, then you had React, now there's Svelte. Who knows what's going to happen in, I don't know, in 2 years or 5 years. But JavaScript's still there. Libraries and frameworks keep changing. So again, I hate you, but I don't think it's you, JavaScript. The thing is that there are some missing part. The fact that those fundamentals, from my point of view, 3 things. The event loop, scope, and function. And when I finally understood a bit of how these things work, I had a lot of haha moments where I could finally understand a bit more about JavaScript. So the event loop. JavaScript, we know, is single threader, can execute one thing at a time. And this is the event loop. So basically, one thing at a time, like a big while loop. I understand that this is not the exact representation of the event loop. It's more complicated than that, and it's more complex and also differs from the implementation from browsers and also what you have in Node.js, for example. But this is enough for now. It executes one thing at a time. This is very important. So think about the function that we were talking about before. So how many calls you have here? How many things get executed here? First, function call. Then you have the map. Then you have 2 lowercase, called at least twice in this case, right? So basically, 4 different things executed 4 different times. So if we check the stack, the execution, again, you have 2 lowercase, we invoke the function, we have the map, then we have the 2 lowercase function call, then another time, and so on and so forth until you get the output. So it executes one thing at a time. And another thing that I was always told since the beginning, hey, JavaScript is so cool because it's non-blocking. Yeah, it's when the I/O is involved, it's non-blocking. So what do you mean by I/O? Events, timer, network calls, Ajax call to the database, all the things that are not CPU intensive. Something that you can delegate. Because probably this is better than before, right? When you have something that needs to be executed externally, some I/O calls, JavaScript delegates, hey, do that for me. I don't know who you are. Go for it. But we can still block. How can we still block? Let's check this function, for example. Useless, I understand that. But just for using it as an example. So it's basically a function that accepts two parameters, two numbers, from and to. And it basically will loop until the from is basically equal or less than the, is equal to the two. So if you pass 0 and 100 until 0 reach 100, you keep looping and do some calculation. What if we call this function with 0 and number.maxSafe integer? Do you know how much is number max safe integer? 9 quadrillion. It's a lot. It's a lot. So if I run this code, and then I also add, if I also add a set timeout, I will just output chow to the console after 2 seconds. Do you know how long it takes to get chow on the screen? On my MacBook, like 25 minutes. Why? Because we can still block with JavaScript. Because these are things related to the CPU bounded. So this is, from my point of view, is very important because I say, yeah, you know, JavaScript is single-threaded. Yeah, but who's doing the job? Someone else. You have thread, somewhere else. So the idea that JavaScript is non-blocking was one of my aha moment, as I said, when I/O is involved. So how is it possible that we can do many things at a time? Let's say many database call, or many Ajax call, or while there's an event in the browser, I can also scroll the page. Because those things are handled by someone else, by libuv, for example, or the browser itself with libevent and things like that. So that's the main idea. Breaking news. The thing is that JavaScript, until ECMAScript 6, didn't know anything about being asynchronous. JavaScript was just executing functions. Okay? The asynchronous model was thanks to the I/O part, the delegation part. But now you have promise. And we know that promise are async by default. How is that possible? Because inside the language now, you have like a mini loop that is not accessible by us as developers, but that's what will give you the fact that promise is always sync, because when you have a promise, you will always do another ride, let's say. So let's talk about the scoping. It's a bit boring, but let's talk about it. In JavaScript, scope refers to the current context of your code. Each function creates its own execution context. Cool, that's the definition. But let's give an example. When you, for example, require a package, whatever, you already have a scope A. Then when you have a function B, you have another scope B. And the scope B has access to scope A. And then you have another function inside the function, scope C. Scope C has access to scope B and scope A. So why is that important? I was coming from Java, PHP, and things like that. And one of the things that people tend to do when they're moving to a new language, which is totally normal, is trying to apply the same best practices, the same approaches they were used to with the previous language. For example, lots of people try to move from PHP to Go. And they wanted to implement, for example, the dependency injection container pattern. The same thing for JavaScript. But in this case, it doesn't make any sense, because JavaScript has other ways to deal with these kind of things. So event loop plus scoping, again, an aha moment, because now, with these two things, we can probably understand better this function. Because you have a for loop, so that's the thing that gets executed, one thing at a time. And then you have, the function, the callback will be executed 3 times, but later. And thanks to the scope, I will be the last value of the first invocation for the for loop. That's why you have 3, 3, 3. Function, the last block. So function are first-class citizen. You can return a function from a function, pass a function as an argument to a function, high-order function, and function are objects in JavaScript. All very super cool. But coming from PHP, for example, or other languages, say, OK, nice, but why is that important? It is important. And we'll see why. Function are objects. When I saw this, I say, now I get it. So this is a function hello that will just output hello with a name that you are passing as a parameter. If you do hello.length, what's that? It looks like an object. It's a property on an object. And the length is basically the number of parameters that you're passing. So that helped me a lot to understand why there are objects. And also the fact that a function also is an object and has a method called call. So basically, the hello function, you can also, instead of doing hello, open and close the parentheses, you can just use the hello.call, which is useless in this case, but that gives you an idea. The fact that function, if you're not returning explicitly, will always return undefined. Okay? So there are a lot of tricks in JavaScript. And at the beginning, for example, I wasn't understanding, okay, I'm using them as well, but I don't understand why at the beginning. So if there is no explicit return, you get undefined. And that's why you can write code like this, because console.log is not returning anything. It's outputting something to the screen, but it's not returning anything. So you can have basically undefined, given the fact that it's false, then you will have the function called to hello all the time. So Dan, okay, you need a Dan Abramov in your JavaScript presentation, otherwise people will complain. So this is a tweet from Dan Abramov. It says that these two snippets are different. Object.method and var method equals object.method, and then equals method. Learn why and you understand JavaScript. The idea behind this is the fact that Dan was also trying to force people to understand how the this work. But in this case, basically, there are also other things that we can learn. For example, let's say that you have this friendly bot object with one method, one function. Say hello, okay? At the beginning, I was getting crazy when I was seeing something like that. Like, you have a new variable called wave, and then you have friendly bot, which is an object, dot say hello. And then you can call it this way. How is that happening? What's the relation with the object? There's no relation with the object. You're just basically copying the signature, let's say. You're copying the function, and you use it outside the friendly bot object. So, functions. Do we pass things by reference or by value? Raise your hand if we think by value. By reference? Are you sure? Let's check. So, in this case, we have a variable number, right? Then you have a do something function. We pass the number. We basically assign 1 to the number. So, in this case, from 0 it goes to 1. And then we return a number. What will be the value of number outside? Still 0. We are passing by value in this case, right? So this code, I can use this cool function. Cool. So thanks, Max. Where are you? Thank you. So basically, yeah, it's a bit useless. Okay, so but thanks anyway. So what I was saying? Okay, cool. So the thing is that in this case it's still 0, right? Because we are passing by value, so we don't have a reference to the integer. So what about strings? In this case, I have a string hello. Then I'm passing to the do something function. I'm changing it to ciao, and then I'm returning the string. What will happen? What will be the value of string outside the function? Still hello. Let's talk about objects. So in this case, you have an object. Sorry if I'm objectifying people, but I didn't want to do that. Okay, it's fine. You have an object with a name Alice. Okay, and then you pass the object. You reassign the object with a name Bob. So if you check object, it's still Alice. But what if we do this? We have our object Alice, but then we change a property on that object. What will be the value of object? Bob in this case. So in this case with objects, we are not passing by value by reference. We are basically passing by sharing. So if you access the properties of the object, then you can change it. But if you are reassigning it, nothing will happen. You can pass the function name as an argument. Say, okay, cool. So let's say that you have this array, this collection of numbers, and you have a map function. You want to get the square root. So at the beginning, okay, so the map will accept a callback. So okay, I'm creating my callback function, and I'll accept each numbers, and I'm going to apply the square root to each number. Pretty easy for me. I mean, fine, I know what to do, right? But then I find out you can write code like this. You don't have to specify the whole callback. At the beginning, it wasn't easy for me to read code like that because I was used to tell the code what to do. In this case, with JavaScript, you have a callback. So map is already passing the number, and you just pass the signature, and that's it. More concise. How many times we write code like this? We have a then, we have promise, a then, and then we invoke the function straight away. This is wrong because, of course, to something will be invoked before even the promise gets called. And I did this kind of mistakes tons of times because, again, my brain was used to, okay, now do this, call this, do that. Instead, we don't have to call the function straight away. Oh, this is my favorite. What's the difference between the two? Nowadays, there is this hipster way of writing JavaScript code, so probably you will see the first version all the time, right? Oh, it's so cool assigning having a variable that is a function and declaring that way. Is there any difference? But obviously, I will explain for the others. So the difference is that in this case, the first is a function expression and will be only defined when that line is reached, right? The other one, instead, the function declaration is defined as soon as you import the module or the file. So you can define your function anywhere in your code, and you can use it straight away no matter where in your file and in your code. So I'm not saying that you should always use function to do something instead of the declaration. I'm just saying that we need to be aware of this. Oh, classes. Now we have classes in JavaScript. That's cool. Have you ever checked that? What's the type of class person? What? Marian. It's a function. So the thing is that, again, we are going back to the fundamentals, okay? So having classes is good because it will avoid lots of troubles with when you want to do inheritance and other things. But at the end of the day, it's always a function. That's why it's important to understand in JavaScript. So again, with these things that I discussed for the last 27 minutes, people can, if you understand those things, even if you don't go that deep, you could answer all the main questions on Stack Overflow, except this, because this is another talk. But if you get that, even without going too deep inside what's an event loop, scoping, and function, you can easily answer those questions. So again, probably it's not JavaScript. Probably it's me. Because I think we still need a better guidance in general. Because, for example, currying, you can return a function from a function. How cool is that? So this is one of the main examples that you find online, even on MDN. So in this case, basically, you have a function add, that accepts one parameter. Then you have another function that will accept another parameter, let's say another number. And then, basically, you sum up the two parameters. How cool is that? I don't know. I'm not using this kind of things in my code every day, right? So it's difficult sometimes to understand why currying, for example, is powerful, why closure is powerful. Let's try a step back. Let's try to make another example. How many of you work on an e-commerce or retail, things like that, at least once? Come on. OK, let's say that you have an e-commerce, OK? And let's say that you want to provide, OK, so basically Brexit is happening, things like that, so it's very sad. And you want to, let's say, when you sell stuff, you want to sell things also not just in the UK, but you want to sell it in Europe. And you want to convert precisely the currency. So you have a function, convert, that will get the first currency, the currency that you want to convert it, and then the amount. And then you need to get the rate, right? Let's say that for sake of, I couldn't put the whole code there, but let's say that you're not getting the rate from a config. Let's say that you're calling an external service that does that for you, and every time you call that service, you pay. Okay, because you want to be accurate. And then you return the amount multiplied by the rate. Okay, so this is how you will call the function, right? You will have convert pound to euro, 500, 2001. Is that clear so far? Cool. But shit, our e-commerce is very popular, and every time I need to call this very popular in Europe, and every time I'm calling the convert rate, I'm spending tons of money talking to the external company. Is there any way we can fix that? Is there any way we can avoid to call the external company many times? Well, let's try with currying. In this case, so what I have a convert function, so that from amount to amount, that will return, that will get the rate for a specific currencies, and then I'm returning a function that will accept an amount, and then I will multiply the amount by rate, and I will get the final amount. So what's the benefit of it? So then you can do something like this. You will create another function where you basically pass pound and euro. So you will get back another function, convert pound to euro, and then you can call it as many times as you want. But thanks to the scoping, let me try that again. Thanks to the fact that rate has access to this rate for the scoping point of view, I'm just calling basically the service just once. Okay? Almost. So that's also, this is probably an example that's more useful rather than the add to, for example. Another trick that I use sometimes in my code when I just want to experiment or it's not something ready to production is using curring in this way. I have a log function that will basically accept a label, and return a function with a message, and then I'm putting the output into the console of the message itself. Why is that useful? Because let's say that I want to log several stuff. I want to understand, let's say, you have Redis, you have, I don't know, another external API call. I want to understand what's the difference between, what are the logs between the different things that I'm calling. So what I can do is that I can just do this. Log Redis, so I'll get back a function, Redis log, that always had the label, and I can continue that way. So please use MDN to find all the answer that you need for JavaScript. So use it also in Google. Can I ask you a favor? Could you please all stand up? Put your arm close to your heart. And repeat after me. I promise. Louder. I promise. Starting today, I will not click on a W3 School link ever again. Thank you so much. So, again, there's a pretty good documentation on MDN, right, on developer.mozilla.org. Also, lots of people are contributing to that, so let's use it. So you can, and it's also a good documentation about how to use functional approach on JavaScript. Like you use filter, map, reduce, sum, and every. All these kind of things I wasn't used to use, for example, with PHP or other languages, but are so powerful. The code is already written for you. And it's not about, oh, okay, I'm doing functional now, I'm super cool. It's not about that. It's about embracing the declarative way of running code in JavaScript. It's about using JavaScript power. It's about embracing the language. So, as Martin Fowler says, any fool can write code that a computer can understand. At the end, it's always 0 and 1s, right? Good programmers write code that humans can understand. That's why we should leverage on declarative way of using JavaScript, not just because it's cool to do functional or it's cool to use those functions. So I still think there is a gap that I'm trying to fill, but I can't do that myself, of course, alone, because either you have tons of books on how to write an application in JavaScript that covers a lot of things. Good job. So, or you have, for example, lots of amazing books. For example, You Don't Know JavaScript by Kelly Simpson is amazing, but they go really deep on stuff. So I still think that there's something missing in the middle, something that can explain people that are starting with a language at the beginning, just to understand those building blocks, okay, without even going too deep. So if you are stressed sometimes when you're using JavaScript, the famous call JavaScript fatigue, it's normal. Even Gedify, even Kelly Simpson sometimes says that, oh, sometimes I also do mistakes, I'm struggling with the language, even if he wrote many books and stuff like that. So my takeaways for this talk, from this talk, is focus on understanding the building blocks. You don't have to go to that tape, as I said, but just to try to understand those three things: event loop, scope, and function. And if you're a beginner, find a mentor. If you can't find a mentor, find a buddy, someone that has the same struggles. And if you can support, be a mentor, and try to use real-life examples, something that is more meaningful, not add to, for example, or do something like I did at the beginning, but that's another story. If you're a mentor, provide simple and clear guidance, as I said. Those are mentors and mentees that took part in my life. And it's also important to, even if you're a mentor, even if you think you know JavaScript, probably you do, sometimes you will be surprised by the question that a mentee is going to ask you, or things that maybe you already gave for granted and you can't explain properly. That means that also you have to go back and try to understand how things work. So again, dear JavaScript, I love you, I hate you. It's not you, it's me, or us. Thanks.